Today on the show, we are welcoming Julia O'Mara. She is the co-founder and COO of Pickle, the peer-to-peer rental marketplace, making it easy and affordable to rent high-quality clothing and accessories within your community and beyond. In less than a year, Pickle introduced a new way to shop, brought 50,000 plus items into circulation, and powered lucrative side hustles. Before founding Pickle, Julia served as a senior product manager at the Blackstone Group, where she led product analysis for the investor relations and fundraising teams. So nice to meet you, Julia. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
And where are you calling in from today?
I'm calling in. We're based out of New York. Our office is downtown in the financial district.
Awesome. Well, before we get into all things Pickle today, I'd love to hear a little bit about your career background. You started out with Blackstone and product management, super impressive. Would love to hear more about what you were responsible for there and how you got the opportunity to work for that company and in that role.
Yeah, absolutely. So at Blackstone, I was essentially on the technology and innovations team, and I worked very closely with the fundraising and investor relations teams to essentially build out different solutions for their fundraising processes. One example of a cool project that I actually worked on closely with my co-founder, Brian, who's the co-founder of Pickle, was related to building out a robust prospecting tool for the fundraising and investor relations team. They were at the time launching new businesses and verticals outside of traditional real estate and private equity, and they needed a better way to source those LPs for these new funds. So we combined a bunch of third-party data and internal proprietary Blackstone data to essentially have this really robust one-stop shop prospecting tool for them to use. I worked closely with those teams as kind of our key stakeholders to gather the requirements and the use cases for that specific tool, and then translated those into a design that was then presented and worked on with our data engineering and computer science engineering teams, which we were then able to build out that robust product and bring right back to the fundraising teams that they used internally, and also was brought all the way up to leadership to be used for their different prospecting initiatives. That was really cool to work on. It definitely had a big impact within those teams in that business. So I enjoyed that a lot. But my role was a lot of between the different fundraising teams, as well as our data engineering and software engineering team at Blackstone. How I got started at Blackstone, I essentially learned about Blackstone through on-campus recruiting at Penn, where I went to undergrad. I essentially interviewed for an internship opportunity there, and I ended up not getting the internship position, but I ended up working at Deloitte over the summer as a technology business analyst, essentially doing different consulting initiatives related to CRMs and other technology platforms for our clients. I got a lot of really great experience there. And then at the end of my internship, after doing the full consulting, I was traveling back and forth from Kansas City to Philadelphia. I decided that I wanted to be in New York City, and I thought about some of the other companies that I would consider potentially interviewing for again. I had done a good job networking during my initial kind of pass at looking at Blackstone, and I reached back out to those connections and was able to say, hey, I'm really interested in working here. Here's what I did over the summer. Here's why I'm a really great fit for a full-time role here. Essentially asked for an interview, and they brought me in for a super day, and I got a call back that afternoon that I got an offer. So that's a little advice of asking for an interview and a job if you think that you deserve it. But that's how I got started at Blackstone initially.
At some point while you're at Blackstone, you decided to take a leap into entrepreneurship. Walk
Yes.
us through how you made that decision, how you saw the opportunity for Pickle, and how you ultimately felt confident to go all in on your business.
Great question. A lot of people have asked me this question of how did you have the guts to leave your stable job at Blackstone, or why would you leave that opportunity? And there are quite a few different reasons, but one, Blackstone is where I met my co-founder, Brian McMahon. He's the best. And we worked together at Blackstone for almost 2 years. So really overlapped the entire time that I was there working on all different projects and initiatives very closely. So someone that I knew I worked really well with, he approached me about the idea of Pickle 1.0, which I can dive into the details about that. But I was very excited about the opportunity of pursuing something outside of a more traditional route. And the pandemic kind of opened my eyes to see that while I loved the people that I was working with at Blackstone, I wasn't incredibly passionate about the work that I was doing there. And as Brian had kind of told me about this idea and we were starting to kind of marinate on it, and I was starting to all of a sudden think about it all the time and was putting in more time and thinking about that concept as opposed to what I was working on at Blackstone, that in my head I was like, wow, this is something I'm actually passionate about and I can really see myself trying to pursue. I also had a ton of trust and faith in Brian and I as co-founders. So that was essentially what led me to take that big leap away from the stable job at Blackstone. But that's essentially the biggest reason I left. Was one, I did have a lot of conviction in the idea, but two, I believed in Brian and I as co-founders and knew that we would be able to navigate the different challenges of starting a business.
What was the original idea, or Pickle 1.0?
Yes. Original idea of Pickle 1.0 was essentially a social polling platform. And the original goal was to help people make better purchase decisions through social polling, which essentially allowed people to crowdsource opinions from different communities of people that had similar preferences. So the main use case and where we saw the best usage of the platform was within this fashion space where people were looking to get advice about what to buy, what to wear, what brands they should be investing in, really in that realm. And those polls were essentially looked like a UI of polls on a feed, and you would be able to vote on a few different options. So you would say, I'm in the market for a new dress. Should I buy option A, option B, option C? And then the community would vote and essentially help me de-risk my purchase. We also had comments in those polls, and we saw a lot of people recommending items that they had already owned and that were in their personal closets. And this was kind of the beginning of that light bulb moment of pivoting over to where we currently are with Pickle today. And what was interesting in those comments is they were very heavily engaged, and people would even sometimes start commenting back and forth of like, oh, you could borrow this from me. And we saw a really interesting opportunity that was heavier in kind of the fashion marketplace space to be able to open up this opportunity of more of like a community closet or a way to share items that people owned in a really sustainable and cost effective and accessible way. And that led us essentially to Pickle today, a rental marketplace where people can rent the things that they own. Right now, we're starting with peer-to-peer rentals in the women's fashion and accessory space, and then we will be expanding to other categories. But essentially, people are able to list the items that they own. These are really popular, trendy pieces, the items that people love and want to hold on to, but would love to make, a side hustle on. So they list those items, and then people in their community are able to rent them, wear them, and return them. And our app and technology facilitates the entire process.
Awesome. So when you and Brian first left Blackstone, had either of you started a business before, or did you have like founder or entrepreneur resources to tap into? What was like that first 6 months? What did that look like, and how did you get Pickle 1.0 into the world?
Great question. Neither of us has started a business before. We both had some entrepreneurial background. Brian's mom started a business. He always knew he wanted to start a business. I had a minor in entrepreneurship in undergrad and found that I was much more interested in those classes than my material science engineering classes. So paved a little bit of foreshadowing there for me that I would be interested in the startup realm. So we both kind of had the itch for it. I would say the beginning was a lot of just research of where to even get started. First and foremost, of course, building out and fleshing out that business plan and figuring out how we could get a proof of concept or, an app into the market as soon as possible so that we could actually test and start to see how users would actually use the platform, which is one of our biggest lessons learned. And what I would say for anybody looking to build an app and start a company is getting to that proof of concept or that test where you can actually have some people interacting with your platform. You'll often find that people are using your platform potentially in a different way than you would have intended it to be built, and can lead you to a potential pivot or a better way to optimize and everything. But we did a ton of research and built out our different business plan, and essentially went heads down on building out the initial version of Pickle 1.0. We did a lot of evaluation of how we would be able to use or obtain development resources. And we ended up coming to the conclusion that we wanted to really keep it in-house and do it ourselves. And that essentially involved Brian learning how to code for Pickle. So his first line of code that he ever wrote was the first line of code for Pickle. Amazing. I get to brag about him. He doesn't like to brag about it, but it is actually incredible what he was able to learn how to develop. We essentially worked on building everything together. I was the designer, he was the developer. We had a lot of late nights on Zoom of, live designing and building out the first version of Pickle, and just getting it in a state where we could then put it into beta to invite some family and friends and people to essentially test out the basic functionality of that social polling platform.
Awesome. And you mentioned from putting that product out into the market, that's how you learned and saw the opportunity for the marketplace. So tell us about that pivot, that aha moment, and then how you quickly leaned into that, and what did it take to get a marketplace off the ground?
Yes. So once we had really looked at that usage data and we saw some key insights to give us enough conviction of pivoting over to this rental marketplace, we shut down the original version of Pickle in like the spring of 2022, around April, and we essentially retooled, rebuilt, and redeveloped the entire platform to have the basic structure of the rental marketplace. Again, we're big on let's just get something out there. It does not need to be the final tool or product that we know we're building towards, but something to even see if we can get our Stripe integration to work to get those first rentals going. So we did that and we retooled it. We went heads down for like 2 or 3 weeks in April of 2022. And then in May, we essentially opened kind of like a soft launch of beta of seeing who we could get amongst some of our close friends to try out the app. The journey there was really interesting because marketplaces are fascinating and super interesting to build because it's challenging. There's two sides, right? We have the supply side and the demand side. And for the purpose of this podcast, we refer to the supply side as the owners or the listers on Pickle. So those are the people that will upload their items. They're sharing their closets. They want them to be rented out. And then we call the people that are renting the items the renters. And when we were doing our research and how to even build a marketplace and everything, there is a very clear indicator that you have to focus on the supply side first. So nobody can rent anything until there are items for people to rent, or enough of them, and ideally a good amount of volume in that supply. So the first thing that we had to focus on was figuring out how we could acquire supply and get people to upload items without the immediate promise of getting a rental right away, because people weren't renting right away. So a very big challenge of starting. So one, I found some of my closest girlfriends and said, I'm going to come over to your apartment and I'm going to take pictures of you and your items and we're going to upload them to Pickle, and did that quite a few times. And then thought about who are people that have a good amount of these excess pieces, have really good taste in fashion and clothing. And that kind of led us to thinking about the micro and nano influencer and creator space, specifically in the fashion vertical. So I did a lot of DMing and outreach to these influencers just to see if anybody would listen to the idea that we have about Pickle and see if they would be interested in uploading their pieces. Got a few bites early on of people that were willing to kind of take the chance on learning more, worked with them in a very hands-on way of getting some of their closets uploaded. And then we thought about other ways that we could scale that a tiny bit. And similar to the way that Airbnb found out that they, needed the beautiful photos of the homes in order for those listings to get rented out, we realized people would want beautiful photos for their items. And what's nice about influencers or creators is they have a beautiful Instagram grid that they can translate right over to Pickle. So that has worked really well and continues to work right now on Pickle with the way that people are uploading their items. But we also would host these really scrappy and affordable photo shoots. And we would just invite, a couple of creators, try to get 10 to 15 there that would rotate in between an hour or two with this photographer that we hired on Snapper or something. Or actually, I think we worked with a student photographer at the time. And we would say, hey, just wear some of your cutest pieces. And the goal was to educate them about Pickle and then give them these assets they could use both on their socials as well as on Pickle to be able to upload their first items. And that was helpful because once we could convince them to upload their pieces onto Pickle, they also had those photos ready to be used on their Instagram feeds and use that for UGC. So that was kind of the way that we kickstarted the supply side of things. It was really helpful to target people that had this fashion sense and could kind of set the precedent of the high quality items and the really trendy supply that people actually wanted to rent on the platform. So we were really excited that we went in that direction of working with them. These creators and influencers have a pretty tight knit community. So they were able to kind of start spreading the word amongst their friends. They go to a lot of similar events and things like that. And then we definitely leaned into working with them on different UGC campaigns. So, we didn't have any marketing budget to do paid influencer partnerships or ads, or we tried that one time and we avoided doing true paid because it's a variable return on investment. So we went the organic route of looking to work with them on posting about their closets and sharing them with their audience. And that's kind of how we started getting the very base of Pickle going. Heavy focus on the supply side and the side hustle aspects of Pickle. Really leaned into, hey, you could make some extra money. Here's how you afford expensive coffee, or here's how you afford your drinks for the weekend, or that dinner that you're going to go splurge on out in New York. And all of those tangible use cases of if you share the pieces of clothes that are sitting in your closet that you just wore and you're probably not going to wear for a little while, you'll be able to do these other activities.
And then once you got the supply side really built up,
Yeah.
how did you get the renters to come to the
Yes.
platform?
It's interesting because I think that was an organic shift that is really interesting to see in a marketplace where once you have enough supply density, you start to see the demand pick up with the supply growth that we were seeing. So, a marketing campaign or an initiative that would be focused around, oh, look at my closet that I'm renting out and sharing, and here's my side hustle. People are also starting to look at that as, ooh, I'd like to wear that. That's really cool. That would be an interesting way to borrow your piece or something. So some of those marketing channels and campaigns started to then transition into more of the demand side of things. And now that people could actually get onto the platform and find some things that they thought were cute and that they could fit them, that they wanted to wear and everything, that allowed us to build up the demand side. And then, of course, we started leaning into other messaging around the use cases of using Pickle. So whether it's that next wedding you have, your birthday party, a girls' night out, a date night, first date, whatever it was, we started leaning into those. People would have all these different ways that they could think about potentially using Pickle as a solution for that special occasion or for that last minute outfit. So a big focus of ours on Pickle. We have 3 core kind of verticals and values that we focus on. One is that high quality supply, things that are very trendy, in demand right now. These are the pieces that will sell out online. They're things that people would love to purchase, but it's a lot to splurge on that $500 dress, but I'd love to rent it for 10 to 20% of the retail value. Those are the items that we really focus on getting onto the platform, and they are the items that get rented. So supply, huge focus there, of course, but then the convenience vertical, it also really spoke with the demand side. So we do allow door-to-door courier delivery, which essentially allows people to get their items same day, potentially within the hour, when they're ready to rent. So they're able to order something from somebody that's in their neighborhood, and as long as it's within the delivery distance, They can have it delivered to them as soon as the owner is ready to hand it off to the courier. It's the most popular method of renting in New York City, and it's very popular amongst our renters. So we focus a lot on that convenient experience. And then our third kind of pillar and focus area is on our community. These are the people that are doing most of our marketing legwork with word of mouth and organic spread and UGC and everything. And so we have a few different initiatives that we've been working on and some that we're launching fairly soon around the different owners and renters on our platform.
Were there ever any concerns from the sellers, either about things like theft or damage to their goods? And how has your team thought about kind of reassuring those sellers or those
Yes.
renters?
A great question. We do have a pickle protection guarantee. So that essentially protects both sides of the marketplace. So, one, if you're a renter and you're getting an item, you are guaranteed to get an item that is clean, ready to wear, and as described. So, if I ordered something and I ordered it in a size medium and it arrived as a size extra small, then I'm able to get a refund and I'm able to file a case with the Pickle customer support team and have that refund processed right away. The flip side, of course, is the owner. And of course, where we want to make sure they are very comfortable renting out their items is that there is liability on the renter side if they were to damage or lose an item. So if they damage an item, they're liable for up to 5 times the rental price to repair those damages. And then if they were to fully lose or damage the item beyond repair, then they are liable for the retail price. So those are parts of our terms and conditions and what everyone agrees to as the pickle protection guarantee. And we have an amazing customer support team that helps facilitate those cases. And we have some additional technology that we're rolling out that will allow a lot of those cases to be solved directly within the app and filed there directly.
So I imagine some of the influencers that are listing items on Pickle might be making a good amount of money. Can you share some of the money behind having listing your items on Pickle? And then also, how does your company actually make money?
Yes, we have had a few quotes that say I use my pickle money for rent. So in New York City,
Wow.
that's quite a bit of money. But yes, definitely in our top closets here, they're making up to a couple $1,000s a month, which is great money, and it's something that you're definitely not going to walk over on the street, and it can make a big difference. And it's something that we get quotes from owners that people are really invested in this as a core side hustle, but also like almost a fun hobby too for some people who have, I don't want to say maybe shopping addiction or passion. Have now found a new reason to go out and invest in really high quality pieces that they might not have been able to justify before. So some of these gowns and bags that are, designer and a couple $1,000s, they're really excited to be able to circulate and make some money back off of those. So we do promote shopping as well, but it's nice that people can invest in those high quality items and then make some money back off of it. As far as the way that we make money, we have a 20% take rate and the owner keeps 80%. So when they are going through the upload flow and looking to rent out their items, they list items very similarly to other, secondhand marketplaces where they add in the photos, often right from their Instagram. They add in the description, the details of the item, including the brand, color, price. And when they list out their price, we will inform them right there how much they're making from their rental. So the cut comes out of essentially the owner's side. So the renter, when they go and do the checkout process, they see something that they're renting for $50. They pay $50. And if they want to pay for additional delivery fees, then they're able to if they don't want to go pick up the item themselves.
So, with all the amazing growth on Pickle, your team has raised $8 million in seed funding, co led by Craft Ventures and First Mark Capital. So, I'm curious, why did your team decide to bring on outside capital? And was this your first VC fundraise?
Yes, this was our first VC fundraise. We had initially basically been bootstrapped. Brian and I went no salary for a long time. And then we did a small family friends kind of angels type of round on a safe note. but this was our first institutional round. So we essentially spread out a very small amount of capital for 2.5 years before we raised this. So Brian and I essentially worked on Pickle full time by ourselves for those 2.5 years. And we did anything and everything all by ourselves to make sure that we could do that. So that meant everything from all of the marketing, the influencer outreach, the partnerships, the deliveries. Brian and I did those for 7 months on the New York City subways to make sure that people could get their items door to door. And at the end of those 2.5 years, as we were starting to grow more and scale more, we needed additional resources to continue building out our app, our platform. We needed some software engineers. We needed additional resources on the growth and community side of things as well. And we want to continue with this very fast pace of growth. And in order to do that, we wanted to bring on institutional capital to do so. So that was kind of the reasoning. And Brian and I had basically done up to our capacity of 2 people and needed to bring on some additional resources.
Very understandable. Can you share a little bit about your strategy for fundraising? Any like lessons that you learned along the way as first-time founders raising VC dollars?
Yes. First time founders, it is not easy to raise capital. I would first and foremost preface and definitely expect way more no's than yeses. So don't feel sad when someone says we're rooting for you from the sidelines, because you will hear that a lot. But there are quite a few things. One, warm intros are the best way that you can ever get introduced to a VC. And that's great if you already have a network of people in the VC space. Brian and I did not have a network of people in the VC space. We worked at Blackstone, but that is very different amount of capital that's getting raised there. So we were essentially net new with our network of VC people. But you do what you can in your past, college network, your friends of friends, and everything. And it's difficult, and it's something that we ended up focusing on a bit more towards the end. But you need to go and network in person and form those relationships and really talk about your company, because no email is going to do your vision, the problem you're solving justice. If you can actually go and talk to the investors in person, and you're ideally talking to them about your company before you're formally pitching to them, you're going to be in a much better spot to get that first meeting or get a meeting with a decision maker at the fund. So that's something that we felt like we didn't emphasize enough at some of the beginning of our fundraising and efforts. And it's because we at our hearts are like builders, and we wanted to spend all the time we could doing that as opposed to doing some of the networking and fundraising. But we are good at talking to people in person, and most founders are, and they're going to be the best sales people of their companies. So once we did that, we were able to get some of the right connections and get into the rooms with Craft and Burst and First Mark, which was awesome. And once we did, then we were able to move pretty quickly with those processes. But definitely a good amount of effort on our side, and some luck with timing, of course, with some growth that we had before working on that fundraise.
Definitely. How did you kind of paint the picture and story of Pickle, and why, especially now, is a great time for investors to be backing a company like Pickle?
There's a lot of things that we painted. One was definitely our founding story and the things that we had learned through the pivot, and how we had worked on everything in a super scrappy way and did whatever we could to learn directly from our customers. Like us doing the deliveries ourselves for 7 months. Sure, it was not, luxurious or anything, and it wasn't the most fun experience, but we directly talked to our customers every single day when we were doing those deliveries. And so we were able to learn about their experience using the platform. We were also able to learn about the direct needs of how we would build out the delivery technology, so that when we would work on integrating with other courier networks, then we knew exactly how that process was going to work, because we physically did it ourselves. So things like that definitely resonated with our investors. As far as the story, we would show our growth traction, our really strong retention numbers, the stickiness that we have on the platform, which was definitely a very exciting metric that they like to lean into. And then we talked about, how the rental marketplace space right now is something that we think it's the best time to tackle currently for quite a few different reasons. One being with the local approach, there's never been a better time as far as the investment that's gone into different delivery technologies and that last mile. So we're able to really lean into those and leverage those as a convenient solution that's built into our platform. There has been a great movement towards secondhand and that type of circular economy and sharing aspect that is now much more regular within consumer behavior, and it is no longer as taboo. Renting is not a brand new concept or anything. It has been paved by Airbnb and Rent the Runway and Turo, and people are familiar with like sharing assets, and there is no reason that it shouldn't go far beyond just homes and cars. It could be anything that's in your home. We truly believe you don't need to own everything within your own community, that there can be a great way to be able to share there. So we talked a lot about that and had a lot of conviction in ourselves and told our founding story well. And that really helped with when we were pitching with investors.
And then final question on the VC investor topic. How did your team think about bringing on the right investors and making sure you had the right people on Pickle's cap table?
Yes, great question. So when we looked at investors, we definitely cared about how interested, of course, they were in our platform and the belief that they had in us as founders. When we were meeting with Kraft and Firstmark, they had downloaded Pickle, they had tried out the app, they had really been using it, they were talking to their teams about it, they were very invested in understanding the user experience and what that experience actually looked like as well, which I think was definitely differentiated from other investors that we had gotten certain meetings with or had gone further along in the process, but they hadn't become like that invested. So that was definitely a good indicator. We also were very interested in having marketplace expertise. So it is not easy, obviously, to build a marketplace type of company, but these investors are absolute experts in this space. Jeff Fleur, he built StubHub and he has invested in quite a number of other marketplaces outside of that. On our Firstmark team, Rick was one of the first checks in Pinterest, and Derek was pretty early and influential at Airbnb. So we have people that are so directly tied and focused in that marketplace space that they know the best ways to navigate all of the different levers on the supply side, the demand side, understand what a healthy marketplace looks like and the metrics that you need to be measuring for getting towards, your next fundraising round, all the way through thinking about where you need to grow and scale to get towards an exit, things that we need advisement on. And so that really excited us, and we felt confident that we'd be able to do and execute on these things with having them essentially as a team that was standing behind us and helping us move forward.
So now that you have this amazing unlock of capital and resources after just bootstrapping, it sounds like, for a few years,
Yeah.
what is coming up for Pickle in the next year? What are your big plans?
So coming up in the next year, we are actually opening a retail space very soon in the West Village. So we're very excited about that. There's gonna be a lot of new details and everything coming out on social media and some press in the next few weeks, but it'll be in December and it'll be a really amazing experience to be able to do some in-person renting and some other community interactions there. So definitely follow along on our social media for that. That's really exciting. We're also obviously hiring and expanding the team. We have quite a few people in New York now. We just brought on a product manager and we're looking at expanding out to different cities. So Pickle is available nationally. You can ship items in order to rent them. So if you are located anywhere outside of New York and you want to rent from people that are in New York, no problem. You can do that with the shipping method. People do love renting locally. So we are using that kind of city by city approach. But LA is our next largest city that's has some organic growth, which we're really excited about. So we'll be tapping in there, hiring out there and building out that market. And then we've started to see some early pop-up cities that we'll also be leaning into in the next year.
Super cool. So exciting. Um, any specific roles or talent that you are looking for specifically in New York or in LA that you want to shout out and highlight here?
In New York right now, we will be bringing on some additional stylists for our retail team. So if people are interested in both digital styling and in-person styling, and working at the retail store, we are definitely looking for some more of those positions. And then in LA, we are actively recruiting and hiring a community manager, somebody that will help launch that community and really be on the ground there to run those in-person events and really connect the IRL and URL, if you would say.
Amazing. And then as we start to wrap things up, can you share a female founder, investor, or leader who inspires you and a bit about why?
Yes, I was thinking about this one quite a bit, but I was so blown away by Sarah Blakely's story and how she started Spanx. And I think her scrappiness and grit and absolute hustle mindset is something that I find incredibly inspirational and something that we are looking to continue to build within Pickle, regardless of how much capital we have raised. You know, she didn't raise any money, but she was able to learn how to write a patent herself, which I have been told, do not do that yourself. It is very difficult. You will get rejected, likely, unless you're her. But and she, you know, even tried on her product in order to close her first client, like things like that. That you just, if you aren't in that hustle mindset, you're not going to be able to do it. And that's something that we definitely took into heart when it was only Brian and I, and we are continuing to do as we are bringing on additional resources and building out our team.
I love Sarah Blakely's story. I think there's a great podcast episode on the How I Built This show where
Yes,
she's on.
it's so
I think
good.
we're like thinking about the same episode. It's
Yes.
amazing. And then finally, where can people find you and where can people sign up and try out Pickle?
Yes. So if you're interested in connecting with me personally, you can message me on LinkedIn or Instagram or anything. But instead, you should probably follow us on Instagram as Pickle. Our handle is Shop on Pickle. You can find us on Instagram and TikTok. And we love responding to DMs and connecting with our community members. And then you can download the app right there. It's in the link in our bio on both Instagram and TikTok.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on to the show. And it was so
Of
nice
course.
to finally meet you.
It was so great to meet you. Thank you so much for having me.